The House will come to order. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the adoption by the Senate of the following Senate Concurrent Resolution herewith transmitted. Senate Concurrent Resolution number 4, relating to adjournment for more than 3 days. The message is signed Thomas S. Bodern, Secretary of the Senate. Long moves that the rules be so far suspended that Senate Concurrent Resolution number 4 be now considered and placed upon its final adoption.
I recognize the maker of the motion, the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long, to explain your motion.
Mr. Speaker, this is a suspension of the rules that would allow us to take our spring break next week.
Is there any discussion to Representative Long's motion? I recognize the member from Wright, Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise just to a point of order or a clarification. For some of us, it's not spring break. For some of us, it's Easter, Holy Week, and Passover. So I don't know about you, Speaker Long, or Majority Leader. I'm going to go and take a break so I can be with my family during the Easter holiday and Passover. So if Minnesotans are watching, personally, at least the 13 years I've been here, we're not going on a spring break by any stretch of the imagination. We're breaking for the Holy Week of Easter and Passover. And that is the purpose, at least in my vote, is why we're breaking. And frankly, I don't think we're breaking long enough. In years past, we usually had a whole week off to be with our families and celebrate the most holiest week in the Christian calendar and in the Jewish calendar as well. So I think there's maybe a little bit of mistake that we don't take off the Monday and Tuesday of next week. But for that, I am finished with my little passionate talk about the Holy Week.
Any further discussion to Representative Long's motion? I recognize the member from Stearns, the Minority Leader, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, please vote in favor of suspending the rules.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of Representative Long's motion that the rules be so far suspended that Senate Concurrent Resolution 4 be now considered and placed upon its adoption, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails.
Long moves that Senate Concurrent Resolution number 4 be now adopted.
I recognize the maker of the motion, the member from Hennepin, Representative Long, to explain your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the motion that would allow us to take our spring break next week for whatever religious holiday or non-religious occasion you may want to pursue.
Is there any further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Representative Long's motion that Senate Concurrent Resolution 4 be now adopted, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Reports from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Long from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Thursday, March 30th, 2023, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills: Senate File Number 2265 and House File Numbers 1278, 1178, 1370, and 2175. Long from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Monday, April 3rd, 2023, and establishes a pre-filing requirements for amendments offered to the following bills: House File Number 1581 and Senate File Number 1816. Long from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rule 1.23, designates the following bills to be placed on the consent calendar for Monday, April 3rd, 2023. House File Numbers 1182 and 1486.
Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 2265. The clerk will report the bill.
House File Number 2265, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to human services, the second engrossment.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Hennepin, Representative Noor, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is the continuous coverage unwinding bill. In March 2022, the Department of Human Services stopped processing the annual eligibility for the renewals and also other eligibility checks. This was in compliance with the federal FFCRA, which is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. With that, it came with some conditions. The first condition was that we continue coverage for the individuals who are receiving medical assistance, and we added Minnesota Care to that list. One of the conditions that we received additional enhanced federal funds at 6.2%. Members, we received over almost $2 billion to do the continuous coverage for the enrollees. Unfortunately, during the discussion about ending the federal public health emergency, the continuous coverage was initially tied to the federal public health emergency. With the passage of the Consolidated Appropriation Act passed in December 2022, it untied the continuous eligibility coverage to the public health emergency. With now, we have to end the public health emergency continuous coverage effective tomorrow, which is March 31st. So the eligibility redetermination will now begin effective April 1. Members, the department has already started sending mailers to those individuals who are going to be impacted by this unwinding process. Through that process, we will continue to receive additional FMAP, which is the enhanced federal medical funding that we'll receive. That will be about almost $300 million. The next quarter, it's 5%, followed by 2.5%, and then 1.5%. That requires us to have strategies and mitigation process so that no one loses their coverage. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid, CMS, continues to provide guidance for the state. We are one of 44 states that have to make sure that our system is ready so that we can start the unwinding process. So we have to implement mitigation strategies to prevent people from losing coverage. Members, we're talking about 1.5 million Minnesotans who are in Minnesota public health programs. That is 40% of the children in the state of Minnesota who are receiving medical assistance and Minnesota Care. With the ending of the continuous coverage, more than 300,000 Minnesotans are projected to lose their coverage. Unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with today. During the pandemic, when we had the continuous coverage, the number of enrollees increased by 300,000. It was 1.2 million, it went to 1.5 million. Although we will see more than 300,000 lose their coverage, about 25 to 50% of them will re-enroll or resume their coverage. A phenomenon known as Medicaid churn, meaning that you are one point in receiving coverage, the next point because of income change and other things that may have changed, you lose your coverage. Members, we're trying to do our best with this bill to ensure no Minnesotan loses their coverage. This is about life and death. This is about providing care for those who need care. This is about ensuring that those who need prescription, those who need coverage for long-term care, can you imagine that you lose your coverage and you go to the hospital and you're told that now you have got bills to pay? We wanted to make sure that Minnesotans during this process are made whole. The unwinding process, members, is going to be unprecedented. It's going to be complex. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for the enrollees who have to endure this process because for the last 3 years, they have not seen any renewal process. and many of them may not have ever completed the application for the renewal, so this may be the first time that they're seeing that. Likewise, it's going to be a difficult moment for the counties. As you all know, Minnesota is one of 10 states whereby the state supervises while the counties implement and the tribes implement the eligibility determination. With this bill, members, we make sure that we provide resources that are necessary to allow the continuation of coverage. We provide $4.57 million to implement 12 months disregard of assets for individuals who are age 65 and older, people who are blind, individuals who are disabled, so that they can spend down their assets. There's an asset limit if you're in that category for $3,000 per individual or $6,000 per household. So during the 3 years, individuals who have accrued some assets, they have to spend down for up to 12 months for their next renewal. We have $23.276 million for the administrative process through DHS. This allows them to pay for overtime. As I noted, this is the most stressful time, not only for the counties, but also for those who are processing at the state level. Members, Minnesota Care is one of the programs that will be impacted in this, and that is specially run by the state. So this provides the resources that is needed. Also, $1.827 million will be used for the systems, for the MET systems, Maxis system, MMI systems, so that they're ready to do the unwinding. We include $36 million for the counties and the tribes so that they can start hiring individuals. Many of them may not have processed eligibility, and this may be the first time that they're doing. We also understand there's a workforce shortage throughout the state. So this will allow them to hire new workers and train them to be able to process the unwinding. We also include in this bill $4.936 million for healthcare navigators who really assist those who don't speak English well and guide them and help them with the enrollment process. We also make sure that we suspend the premium payments for Minnesota Care during the transition by investing $5.329 million. Members, as I noted, this is a really complicated process that requires our attention right now because it's urgent. We need this bill to be at the governor's desk today so that we can start the unwinding process, and I ask for your support. Thank you so much.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File Number 2265.
Third reading. Further discussion to Senate File 2265. I recognize Representative Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the author noted, 40 out of 50 states in the United States implement state services on their own. Minnesota is one of 10 states where health and human services are taken care of at the county level. So with that, when the counties are not reimbursed for the services that they provide, their only option really is to go to the property tax levy. And as a rural commissioner for the last 10 years, some of the concerns would be that rural Minnesota would be much more greatly affected by property tax levy increases than the state as a whole. So I would encourage a green vote on this today to spread this load throughout the state rather than just or heavily burdened to the rural areas. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I recognize the member for Mysanti, Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Appreciate the efforts to give money. I'm also a former county commissioner to the folks that actually carry out this work. There is a provision in this bill that I see as pretty problematic. Some years ago, when I was the Speaker of the House, we passed a provision called periodic data matching. And that provision was designed to take a look at all of the different data sets that we have access to in state government and make a determination whether someone was not qualified for a public program. And while I appreciate the author, and I agree with you in that we don't want to throw a single person off of a public program, I wouldn't put the period at that point in the sentence. I would say unless they are not qualified or they are fraudulently accessing that program, which is exactly what periodic data matching did, is it found people who were not qualified, who were fraudulently accessing public programs. And the reason that we need to be careful about that is because if they are using, if somebody who is not qualified for a program is accessing it and using those dollars, it means that those dollars are not there for somebody who actually needs them, okay? And so this program, you know, the previous administration delayed and delayed putting this program into place, and ultimately when it finally did, and I wasn't really expecting to talk about this today, or I would have the dates of when these things happened. Ultimately when it did, our state saved tens of millions of dollars by removing people who were not qualified for public programs off of those programs. It was incredibly successful. We didn't take anybody off those programs who was qualified. Anybody who needed them, those people were still had the access they needed to that service. This program was designed to take people off of those programs who were accessing them fraudulently, okay? And it was incredibly successful. During COVID, we or the federal government required us to, I think, or we as a result of requirements at the federal government suspended that periodic data matching program for some time. And if you look in this particular bill, I don't know if you've got it in front of you, it starts on the top of page 3, lines 3.1 through 3.5. The original language said, notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, periodic data matching under Minnesota statutes, blah, 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 subdivision 2 may be suspended. The original language was up to 6 months following the last day of the COVID-19 pandemic health emergency declared by the United States Secretary of Health and Human Services, okay? This bill changes that language from 6 months after the end of the federal state of emergency or pandemic to 12 months. So now, you know, and when our staff and folks were anticipating we were going to restart this program after 6 months, now we're saying we're not going to restart it for 12 months. That's an entire year after the end of the federal, however it's listed, public health emergency as declared by the United States Secretary of Health and Human Services. So we're going to wait, I don't know the exact date of when that emergency ended, but we will not start periodic data matching now, if this bill passes, for 12 months instead of 6 months. And during that time, based on, you know, we went from 1.3 million people, I think, accessing MA in Minnesota before COVID to about 1.5 million. I think we added 300,000 people during that time. I think we're at the highest number we've ever had accessing that public program. And now we're going to wait another year to find out if we've got anybody who is fraudulently accessing that program. That's the effect of what this bill would do. And I have a big problem with that. And it's not trying to take away a benefit that anybody needs. This is about taking the money away from people who are trying to take it fraudulently from state government and reserve it for people who actually need it. And I think we should not be delaying the re-implementation of periodic data matching. It's one of the most successful programs for actually finding, reducing, and eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in our public programs that we have seen in a decade or more. And it's that sort of thing. While it doesn't sound glamorous, it saved the taxpayers tens of millions of dollars per year prior to COVID, prior to its suspension. And it does not make any sense to delay its re-implementation. I understand if you want to give them 6 months, but there's absolutely no need to go from 6 months grace period to now 12 months. And the number of people, I wish I had that data in front of me, the number of people who will likely defraud our state government and access public programs that they are not qualified for because we have decided in this bill to look the other way. So that's the practical implication of that little bit of language at the top of page 3 in this bill. We're just saying that state government and the county governments who administer these programs, we're just instructing them to look the other way for a complete 12 months after the end of that COVID-19 emergency. And we're going to let anybody just have a free heyday at defrauding state government during that time. And that means that there's going to be less dollars for the people who actually need it. And I think that our responsibility here as lawmakers should be to make sure that we're watching every dollar that's spent and making sure it's going to somebody that needs it. Because before we can spend $1, and this is something we should all remember every day when we're doing our job, before we can spend $1, we must first take it from someone else. And that's a big deal. This isn't our money we're spending here. It's not the state government's money we're spending here in these public programs. These are tax dollars that we have collected from Minnesotans to do something that is of a greater good, which is to provide necessary services to Minnesotans that need those services, in this case, medical assistance. So, but in this provision, we're basically saying we're going to look the other way for 12 months. And I wish I would have caught this earlier because I would have offered an amendment to change that provision and leave it at 6 months. There's no way that we should be allowing that to go out to 12 months from 6 months. So members, please pay close attention to what's moving in these bills. That is an incredibly successful program. If you don't know about it, look into it. It is something that simply catches people who are defrauding state government, and it removes them from our public programs. And it has been incredibly successful. And while I agree with the author, and thank you for your work on this, I do want everybody, I don't want anybody to be thrown off of a public program that needs that program, that qualifies for that program. It shouldn't have been a full stop after we don't want anybody to be thrown off of a public program. If somebody's defrauding the state, if somebody's accessing a public program and they shouldn't, it's our obligation to make sure that we uncover that we rectify that situation, remove that person from the public program, and reserve those dollars for people that need it. So just what seems like a small provision, I guarantee you this provision alone will cost the state probably $20 million in fraud. Just this one provision. And I wish I had the data right in front of me so I could show you, but if you look into it, you will find that that is the case. This one little provision will cost the state of Minnesota $20 million in fraud. I'll bet you 50 cents that's the case. $20 million in fraud, because that's the sort of number that this periodic data matching was uncovering. And by the way, this periodic data matching doesn't just cover fraud in this program. It uncovers fraud in all of our state programs. It matches the data sets in all of our programs. It compares what people said on their application for this one to what they said on their application for this one, to maybe what they said in their state income tax return, to maybe what they're driving as a vehicle, to maybe the value of the home that they live in. And we have uncovered some really fraudulent people accessing state programs who never should have been because of that periodic data matching. It was a huge success. It will be again once it starts. We should not delay its implementation. So I just wanted to call that to everybody's attention. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Dowd, for pointing that out. That was what I was rising to address. And I too am very concerned about that. And I do have a question for the bill's author, if he would yield to a question.
You will yield to a question, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Noor, I'm wondering, after this 12-month period of time, will the program revert to the quarterly or whatever those data points of checking for eligibility? Will that resume to what it was before the whole COVID issue, or is that still in flux?
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Noor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Scott, just to clarify, these are the conditions that were set by the federal law. When the federal law was passed, we were given the time to suspend all the periodic data matching, number one, to make sure that no one is impacted during that period, including when the approval of the CAA, which are the conditions that we are going to be working on. Likewise, I used to work at the county. And whenever you get those periodic processing, you have to take the appropriate action on time. Turning on those periodic processing for everyone, for those who are receiving MA right now or Minnesota Care, will create a lot of confusion for the workers because they'll jump in to start processing every case. It's an annual process. This process will take up to 12 months starting April. The first month that individuals will lose coverage is effective July. So this will go for 12 months until June, when the system will reset, that everything in the periodic processing and everything that was done pre-pandemic will come back to as usual.
Representative Scott.
Mr. Speaker, well, thank you for that answer, Representative Noor. It's my understanding that periodic data matching is a state law, so the federal government did not suspend that for us. We could still be doing that. We don't need to suspend it for another 12 months. And I'm concerned about some language on lines 3.16 and following. The commissioner may temporarily adjust medical assistance eligibility verification requirements as needed to comply with federal guidance and ensure a timely renewal process for this period. But I'm reading through the language and I'm not finding, and maybe you can point me to it, Representative Noor, you can point me to the page in line that says that after this 12-month waiting period where we really don't have to suspend the periodic data matching, where the language is for ongoing that says we're going to resume after that 12-month period back to what was happening prior to COVID. If the author would yield.
The author will yield. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Noor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Scott, as you noted, the same line, it actually extends to 12 months, meaning that after the 12 months, the system will pick up everything as usual, the way we used to process. And quite frankly, the federal law that I just stated prohibits us from turning on the periodic processing because it's going to impact the entire process. We're not going to process that 1.5 million renewal in one time. This is a manual process. This is a paper-based process that it's going to be done in tranches, so everyone who's going to be impacted will be receiving a different time for their renewal. So that means as we clean up, there'll be more that are going to be waiting who will receive their renewal application in mail. So that means once everyone has been renewed, the whole system will go back to the way it worked pre-pandemic.
Representative Scott.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Representative Noor, for your answers there. Well, I'm at least assured that after this 12-month period of time where we don't need to be suspending periodic data matching, that it will begin again after that 12-month period. Members, it's not good policy. It's just not good policy to not be doing this periodic data matching. The federal government is not requiring that of us. And people's circumstances changed, especially in a tight job market that we have right now. People who may be unemployed and eligible for one of these programs or were eligible during COVID are now working. And so I just don't think it's responsible use of taxpayer dollars. If Representative Noor would yield to another question, Mr. Speaker.
He will yield to another question. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Noor, you mentioned mailings are going out now. Could you tell us what those mailings are telling people that are on these programs right now?
Representative Noor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Scott, the initial mailing that individual will receive is to indicate to them that their renewal process will begin. That actually may have gone out this month. So the next application that they'll receive is the healthcare eligibility application that will go to those individuals who are going to be renewed. So there's the period whereby we send the mail, and then there's a processing time, which is going to be in the month of May, and then by the end of June, individuals that we processed and those who lose their coverage, they will lose their coverage effective July. So there's the mailing that happens, the processing that happens, and then the loss of eligibility.
Representative Scott.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Noor. In this mailing that's already gone out, were people told that they were going to be guaranteed renewal? If he would yield for a question.
He will yield. Representative Noor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With this, I think the initial stage, which is live right now on the website of the Department of Human Services, it requires individuals to update their addresses, their contact information, so when they receive their renewal process, they get the appropriate documents at their address. So this helps us to do the renewal for those individuals. So that's the initial mailer that goes out. It's also live on their website. So if you've got constituents who really need to do their renewals, if they moved, if their circumstances have changed, people have had, families have grown, and some people may have moved out. All those changes need to be reported to the county so that they can pick up the application on time.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, thank you for that answer, Representative Noor. What I'm getting at is I wondered if these notices that went out kind of put the cart before the horse and said, go ahead and fill out this renewal application. Well, go ahead and update your information, and you're going to be guaranteed another year's worth of coverage. Was that ever stated in this, what's already been received by these folks that are currently on the program? If he would yield to a question.
He will yield. Representative Noor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Scott, I think, as I noted, individuals are going to start losing their coverage. There is nothing called guaranteed. Anyone who is ineligible will lose their coverage effective July. So that will continue until the end of the unwinding process. So there's no guarantee there. If you're picked up as one of those individuals who are going to renew and your income ineligible or circumstances have changed, you lose your coverage. So our opportunity here right now is to make sure that our constituents, by putting that information on our newsletter, the e-updates that we're sending so that they're informed. Almost 70% of the individuals who have been contacted are not aware of the renewal that is going to be happening. We haven't done this for 3 years, so people are a little bit not familiar with this process. We're trying to make sure that there's a public campaign to ensure no Minnesotans, no individual loses their coverage who is eligible to receive the medical assistance or Minnesota Care program. And we also need to have an off-ramp for those who can move into the marketplace, MNsure, or they can find other coverage through their employers.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, now I'm confused because you just said you want to make sure that only those that are eligible are receiving the benefits, but we're going to go for a full number year here without them being eligible, according to my understanding of this bill. Correct me if I'm wrong, but members, there's some troubling issues with this bill, and I know our counties, we don't want to harm our counties. They're the ones that are going to have to hand out these, administer this program, and they're having to do it according to what this bill is saying that they have to do, and we can't have an unfunded mandate. But certainly it's troubling when we have any time in government where people get the benefits of a public assistance program, but there's no eligibility requirements, there's no means testing. So thank you, members. Thank you, Representative Noor, for the dialogue.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Hicks.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I just wanted to put a plug in for our counties with this bill. The reason it's a year is because we need to stagger it over 12 months. 1.5 million applications is a lot of work for our county workers. The process to renew health care coverage is not as simple as a form. There is form, but there is also confirming documentation. And then we have to process whether the person qualifies or doesn't. And then we have to send out that notice. This is a lengthy, difficult, complicated process for our county workers. And because of our ongoing workforce shortage within our county workers, we have a lot of amazing new financial workers, but they've never done this. We've never asked them to do this. They started this job in 2021 or 2022 or last week. And they need the time to do this right. And so they need 12 months. It isn't that everyone that's on the program will get to be on the program for 12 months. Applications will be reviewed in sections and in staggered steps, just like they are when we're not in a public health emergency. Renewal dates vary based on when you applied. That's how we manage caseloads of our financial workers in the counties. This bill, the way that it is written, allows that to continue and ensures that we don't hurt our local counties who are already understaffed and struggling to stay working and doing the things that we ask them to do all the time. So I would encourage a green vote so we can ensure that our county workers can get this work done for Minnesotans.
I recognize the member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This has been a really good conversation today, and I appreciate Representative Hicks and her comments because they're absolutely true. This is a huge burden on our counties, a huge burden. And in fact, that is the stuff that, frankly, I was focused on when we discussed this bill in committee. I was really focused on our counties because, you know, I know not all of us live in the human services world, but human services are primarily maintained at the county level, not at the Department of Human Services. And so that was my concern, is ensuring that our counties had the resources that they need to do these redeterminations. I gotta say though, there's about as much money in this bill for DHS as there is for our counties. And our counties are the ones who actually need it. Now, the good news is that our counties were really fair in coming to us. And I asked this question, and the counties let us know that this $30 million is appropriate. That's what they need. That is what they are able to use. They probably wouldn't be able to use more funding than that for this purpose. They came to us with a really fair number that will actually satisfy their needs. And that $30 million, remember, is being used in 87 counties. So 30 million might sound like a big number, but when you spread that across 80 counties, that's not much. So a lot of our smaller counties are not getting significant resources to help manage the redetermination process. I find it interesting, however, that there is almost as much money in this bill for the Department of Human Services. And we asked multiple times in multiple committee hearings, so how many FTEs have we already allocated to DHS, and how many of those are open positions? And as you might imagine, those numbers are staggering. The most direct number we got at one point was that there were around 300 FTEs appropriated, and 42 of them had been filled. But 250 open FTEs. Now, I understand that, you know, we appropriate for certain areas, and it might be other areas that are open, but my goodness, why in the world? DHS has very little to do, frankly, with this determination process. And in committee, you know, we're hearing about things like they're going to create this dashboard. And I asked them, so How will this dashboard help the counties with their renewal process? You know, is there important data from this dashboard that they're going to need to complete their renewals? No, it's just a matter of interest. They're spending money to create a dashboard to satisfy curiosity. Well, I don't need my curiosity satisfied. If I want to know where my county is on determinations, it's really easy for me to call my county and find out. Really easy. But this is the kind of stuff we're spending money on. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to me that we've got just about the same amount of money going to DHS as we do to the counties. DHS are not, the department is not doing these renewals. They're doing a tiny fraction of these renewals. Tiny fraction of these renewals. But we're giving them the same amount of money as we're giving to the counties. That's just silliness. I would also draw attention to some of the things that have already been brought up. I get a little frustrated when we talk about this off-ramp. You know, I was involved in a lot of different negotiations during the pandemic. In my role as deputy leader, I was fortunate to be able to be engaged in those conversations and those discussions, not just on this, but on other issues. And the question that we brought up all the time was the off-ramp. You know, you want more resources, you want to do more, but what's the off-ramp? What's the plan? And we almost never got an answer to that. There never was an off-ramp. There never was a plan. And so here we are now creating off-ramps that should have been happening over the last several years at this point. They should have been happening for the last several years at this point. And I want to draw your attention to lines 2.25 through 2.30. And what this says is, you may not be eligible for medical assistance anymore. But if you're not eligible for medical assistance, we are still going to give you, we're going to give you Minnesota Care with no premiums. So there will still be no premium out-of-pocket cost to you. Folks, we should have been planning for this. A full year with no premiums. I would return to the section that Representative Daudt brought up about the periodic data matching. This one really does not make any sense. Periodic data matching is just part of the process. That is part of the process for these renewals. And we do that to ensure that we're not missing fraud. It is well known, we had many discussions about this in committee, that this is a difficult process. This is still, guys, this is still a paper-based system. It is shocking. Frankly, with the $18 billion surplus, I can't figure out why the money isn't in here to create an electronic system. This is bonkers, if ever anything was bonkers. Paper-based system in the year 2023. And so there are difficulties in this process. This is a population that tends to be more transient. They tend to move more. So there's a lot of concern about being able to contact these folks. So we're sending out snail mail letters to all these people. But as you can imagine, with a paper-based system, with sending out these letters with a transient population, it is really easy to miss some of that data in these renewals, which is exactly why this periodic data matching is so important. It's critical. We want everyone who qualifies for medical assistance, we want to make sure they're getting it. Which is why, frankly, we supported, get these letters out early, start letting folks know that these determinations are coming, make sure folks know that this is a benefit that they can potentially lose if they do not go through this redetermination process. But frankly, with the number of folks we have on MA right now, we know 1.5 million, it grew significantly during the pandemic, because of federal rules that would not allow us to do those determinations. And well, interestingly, we could have done the determinations. We could have been doing the determinations all along. We could have known all along who we were keeping on the rolls because they qualified for medical assistance and who we were keeping on the rolls because we were following the CMS rule that forced us to keep them on the rolls. But we could have known that information. We could have at least maintained that data throughout. There's nothing in law that says we couldn't have known that all along. But this periodic data matching is a really critical element of just ensuring that the people who are getting these benefits are supposed to be getting these benefits. And so the fact that we are delaying this even further really is unfortunate. I would also draw attention, again, we're talking about this off-ramp idea. And when we talk about this off-ramp, one of the things in this bill, lines 3.11 to 3.15, there are limits established. There are income limits, there are asset limits when we are figuring out qualifications for medical assistance. This section addresses asset limits. And folks who would normally not qualify for MA based on their assets are now going to qualify for another year. Where was this off-ramp? Where was the off-ramp? This is not a surprise that this day was coming. We've all known that this day would come. And again, we were asking these questions 2-3 years ago. What's the off-ramp? Folks should have known, folks who qualify do know the asset and income limits. They should have known this for the last year already and had been preparing for this. But instead, we're drawing it out even further. Even further. There are a lot of problems with this bill. And I will say it's frustrating. I was an advocate from the beginning. In the very first hearing on this, my concern has been for our counties the entire time. Because that's where the burden lies. The burden lies with our counties. They are doing these determinations. And it's a lot of work. And I understand that actually it is going to take a year to do these determinations. I get that. The problem is, where's the foresight? Where's the foresight? We've known about these things for years, and here we sit. And of course, the other problem is we're seeing another grab from the department. We're seeing another grab for resources from DHS, and we're seeing another grab for FTEs from DHS. When we know we've allocated money, we've given them the money, but it's never enough. It's never enough. They need more. That's incredibly frustrating. The things they're telling us they're doing for the unwinding, frankly, it's just silliness. The stuff that the department's doing, it's like when they were in committee, they were just justifying their existence to us. They're just justifying their existence to say, oh, yeah, we matter. Well, frankly, nothing they were giving us in committee had much to do with the unwinding at all. And most of it was stuff they were already doing. I asked them very specifically, is this new? They had a PowerPoint slide that went through, these are all the things we're doing for the unwinding. And I asked them in committee, is this new? Is this new? Is this new? No, they're already doing most of it. So they don't need more resources for it. They are already doing it. We don't need to fund them more for that. And one of the new things was this dashboard. Well, I don't need that dashboard. Our counties don't need that dashboard. That dashboard does not help our counties do the redeterminations. We have this habit here. In fact, we just heard it in committee. We just do the bidding of the executive branch. We do the bidding of the departments. That's not our job here. Our job here is to be the legislative branch of government. It is our job to legislate. It is our job to say, this is what you are supposed to do. This is your function. This is what we need you to do to make sure that Minnesotans have what they need for medical assistance. But it's our job to tell them, no, you don't need that. We don't need your make work. The taxpayers of Minnesota do not need to pay for your silliness. We don't need to do it. So while the money for counties here is critical, it's important, I tell you what, the language in this bill is really problematic. And the money for DHS is problematic. I'll be voting no on this today. And I hope we can figure out how to fix this.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Hennepin, Representative Noor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, I know when you have worked at the county and when you have worked at the state, the dashboard that we just heard about is not included in this bill. The funding for the Department of Human Services will cover not only the staffing and overtime needs, it will also include paper and postage that would be necessary to send to the 1.5 million Minnesotans. There will also be processing mixed cases where you have got Minnesota Care combined with medical assistance. They will also have training and support for the counties. They will have a rapid response team to respond to the needs of the county. Nothing happens over time. This is a moment to show that we support those who are disabled, those who are seniors, those who are low-income individuals, so that no Minnesotan, no one who's eligible loses their coverage. Members, I ask you to vote green for this bill. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on Senate File 2265. Would the clerk please call the name of the member who is voting remotely?
Richardson.
There you go. Richardson votes aye.
Richardson votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 82 ayes and 44 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for today is House File 1278. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 1278, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski, to explain the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I believe there's an amendment.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Pelowski moves to amend House Law number 1278. The amendment is coded A1.
Mr. Speaker and members, the amendment, and I'll wait for the pages to pass it out, is simply a clarifying amendment that the $40 million is a one-time expenditure. So I ask for the support of the body.
Is there any further discussion to the A1 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the A1 amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 1278.
Third reading. I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski.
Mr. Speaker and members, House File 1278 puts $40 million into the disaster contingency account. Right now, that account is at $700,000 or less. We expect this spring, if it were a normal spring, to have between $2 million and $3 million in need for disasters, but this is likely not a normal spring. So, Mr. Speaker and members, this would restore the account, and hopefully it would take us through next year.
Is there any further discussion to House File 1278? I recognize the member from Fillmore, Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'd like to thank Chair Pelowski for bringing this forward. I'm not sure how many special sessions this account has avoided, but it's been several. This, I believe, was started in 2007 after the southeastern Minnesota floods, and this really helped southeastern Minnesota. And this program, this fund, has been used all across the state and has done some very, very good things. Thank you, Chair Pelowski.
I recognize the member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and I too stand in support of this bill. The longer we stay cold around Minnesota, we're just putting off the maybe inevitable thought of spring flooding, and we'll need this emergency fund if that ever warms up and occurs. So again, this is very important, so please support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Winona, Representative Pelowski.
Members, again, and I want to thank Representative Davids because it was his district that really created House Files, or the chapters 12A and 12B. When we restore this account, if there is a disaster and we are not in session, the governor or the president of the United States can declare a disaster, and we will get aid to that area right away. There will be no special session. And I just want to remind members there is nothing special about a special session. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on House File 1278. Got her? Good. Will the clerk please call the name of the member who is voting remotely?
Richardson.
There you go. Richardson votes aye.
Richardson votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 126 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for today is House File 1178. The clerk will report the bill.
House File Number 1178, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to transportation.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Nicollet, Representative Brand, to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is an amendment.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Brand moves to amend House File Number 1178. The amendment is coded A1.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Nicollet, Representative Brand, to explain the A1 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The A1 amendment basically it's the State Patrol language to add on to the bill. And what it does is it states that any vehicle model year 2007 or earlier must meet federal motor vehicle standards, and that model year 2008 vehicles were the first year that all seats were required to have shoulder and lap belts in all seats. This is comfort language from the State Patrol, and I would ask for a green vote on the amendment.
Is there any discussion to the A1 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the A1 amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended.
Third reading, House File Number 1178, as amended.
Third reading as amended. Discussion of House File 1178 as amended. I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Nicollet, Representative Brand.
Mr. Speaker, to the bill, House File 1178 is a small piece of legislation that repeals a requirement that we currently have in statute that says that if a school has a vehicle that is 12 years, at that period of time, after 12 years, they have to retire that vehicle. A Type 3 vehicle, an example, could be a car, a minivan, or an SUV, something that's definitely not a bus. Public school districts are operating in tight budgets, and especially where I live, and can't afford to replace perfectly fine vehicles. And frankly, it's wasteful for us to mandate that they do so. And so the requirement has been placed an undue financial burden over school districts over time. This is a small thing we can do for our school districts to have a significant positive impact on budgeting. And what I will tell you is that we are the only state in the union that has this type of statute. In the Transportation Committee, we passed it out with a unanimous vote, and the other body was also passed out with a unanimous vote as well. The bill supporters, and there's a handout going out right now, the bill supporters include the Minnesota School Bus Operators Association, the Minnesota Association of Pupil Transportation, the Minnesota School Board Association, the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. The State Patrol is not opposed, they're neutral, but they added the language to it. And with that, you know, I think I'll just end by saying that House File 2028 is a clone of my bill. Representative Knutson has it, and there are 13 GOP authors on that as well. And I would just ask for everybody to vote green on the bill. Thank you very much.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on House File 1178. Would the clerk please call the name of the member who's voting remotely?
Richardson.
Richardson votes aye.
Richardson votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 126 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as amended in its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for today is House File 2175. The clerk will report the bill.
House File Number 2175, number 5 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to financial institutions.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from LeSueur, Representative Pfarr, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Pfarr moves to amend House File Number 2175. The amendment is coded A2.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from LeSueur, Representative Pfarr, to explain the A2 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment simply codifies the exclusion of farm credit services from this bill.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the A2 amendment, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the A2 amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended.
Third reading, House File Number 2175, as amended.
Third reading as amended. Discussion to House File 2175 as amended. I recognize the member from Morrison, Representative Creshaw.
So, Representative Pfarr, could you explain your bill a little bit more and let me know how this is going to affect the farm credits in my district?
Representative Creshaw, are you asking him to yield to a question?
That was my rehearsal. Mr. Speaker, can I ask Representative Pfarr to yield for a question?
Representative Pfarr will yield. Representative Pfarr. Representative Kreshaw.
Representative Pfarr, again, could you explain the bill a little bit more and the effects for the farm credits in my district?
Representative Pfarr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Kreshaw, for that a very valid question. So, as I said, the amendment excluded farm credit services from the bill. But the bill adopts the state regulatory standards for non-mortgage service lenders in the state. And it looks at two aspects, financial and then the corporate governance or the board oversight of these financial institutions. And I know you're an inquisitive person, Representative Kreshaw, so I know you're going to ask me why. Why do we need this, right? That's because in the last decade, this has increased over tenfold. So these mortgage, non-bank mortgage servicers are now responsible for over 60% of the mortgages in the state. And so this gives us the standards for the standards for which to examine against. Now, if these mortgages are giving you a Freddie or Fannie or FHA or VA loan, it doesn't apply. But the standard servicing is then enforceable by states. And much of the foreclosure problems that occurred during the last financial crisis was due to the fact that these servicers were not prepared to handle it. So when mortgage providers operate in a safe and sound manner, we're much better positioned to fulfill the significant requirements associated with that mortgage. We're looking out for both the consumer and the mortgage provider. Representative Kreshaw, I hope that answers your question.
Representative Kreshaw.
And thank you, Representative Pfarr. And yes, I have heard from my district, and they fully support this as a fine, fine bill, and I would urge a green vote.
Any further discussion to House File 2175? I recognize the author of the bill, Representative Pfarr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, this is a good consumer protection bill, and so I look for a green vote. Thanks.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on House File 2175. Would the clerk please call the name of the member who's voting remotely?
Richardson.
Richardson votes aye.
Richardson votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 126 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as amended in its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 1370. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 1370, number 4 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety, the second engrossment.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Anoka, Representative Stephenson, to explain House File 1370.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members of the House, I'm here today to urge that the legislature address the issue of deepfakes, in particular those that depict sexual content or are used to influence the outcome of an election. Deepfakes are synthetic media that use advanced artificial intelligence techniques to manipulate video or audio content. These technologies make it possible to create highly realistic yet completely false depictions of people doing and saying things that never actually happened. This has serious implications for privacy, free speech, and the integrity of our elections. One of the most concerning applications of deepfakes is the creation of non-consensual pornographic content, which is commonly referred to as revenge porn. This is a serious violation of privacy and can cause significant harm to the individuals portrayed in the content. In many cases, the victim is unaware that the content exists and may only discover it after it has been widely shared online. Another area of concern is the use of deepfakes in political propaganda and election interference. With the increasing sophistication of these technologies, it is becoming easier to create convincing fake news or propaganda that is designed to manipulate public opinion. This could potentially have significant impact on the outcome of elections, undermining the integrity of our democratic process. To address these challenges, I believe that it's necessary for legislation to be enacted to regulate the distribution of deepfakes. This issue is a serious and growing concern that demands immediate action. I urge this body to take steps to protect the privacy, free speech, and democratic rights of all citizens. Mr. Speaker, every word that I just said from the beginning to now was written for me by the artificial intelligence service ChatGPT as a result of a one-sentence prompt that my legislative assistant put into ChatGPT. So this is an illustration to the body of how far artificial intelligence is coming. That my remarks today were entirely written and prepared for you by artificial intelligence. This is an important bill. I'm glad we're going to have this discussion today.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
New Brindley moves to amend House Law number 1370, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A6.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley, to explain the A6 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Excuse me. And first of all, thank you, Representative Stephenson, for the bill. I think everyone in this chamber is on board and understands this. In this changing world of technology, we are seeing some really crazy, really scary stuff. And we want to make sure that we are getting out ahead of that. You know, I mean, we have been in situations, frankly, in relatively recent years where things that seem like they would very obviously be criminal behavior were not. And victims were not able to be taken care of based on existing law. And so, to be clear, I support this bill. I think it is really good, and I think it's really important. I do have some concern when it comes to the election section, Section 2 of the bill, talking about deepfake technology, influence on an election. And my concern lies not so much in the video, audio, that's very clear. And frankly, I in my conversation with Representative Stephenson, I let him know that I had heard just earlier this week, I heard comments from both President Biden and President Trump. I assumed they were real, and neither of them were. They were both this deep fake kind of material. And so I even understand the purpose of that as it pertains to elections. And I think it's important, I think it's critical. However, I do have some concern when it comes to print material. And it is certainly not because I want to open the floodgates and, you know, be able to do whatever we want in print material. However, I think that there's a lot more gray area. And when it comes to electioneering, we've got some bright line. We often talk about bright lines, magic words. We've got bright lines when it comes to electioneering that make it very clear that you are on one side or the other of that line in electioneering. And my concern is that when it comes to print media specifically, and the language I use in the amendment is an electronic image or photograph produced using photo editing software, that this is a much more gray area. When you look at the definition of deepfake, it specifically refers to something depicting speech or conduct. And so I think there's some gray area when it comes to an image. It is difficult to infer speech or conduct when it comes to an image. And I would draw your attention. I know there are some pictures being passed around on the House floor. And frankly, I think a lot of us get a little giggle about a few of these. But I pass them around for a reason, because I think that there are some things that are obviously egregious. You know, Representative Stephenson and I talked about a scenario where you might Photoshop an image to depict a candidate doing something illegal, untoward, immoral, that clearly is not ethical, is frankly not legal to do. It would be a blatant lie to put something like that out. There are also situations where there might be campaign literature that is clearly not real. You might find in your packet of things that have been passed around an image of a former member on horseback, riding a horse. This is clearly not real. I don't think this would qualify as a deepfake. This is clearly not real. I don't think that would qualify as a deepfake. So there are certain things that I think are very clearly out of bounds, and there are other things that I think are clearly within bounds. And if they are cartoonish, if they are depicting something that is clearly not a deepfake, those things would be within bounds. But I do think that there are lots of things that are on that blurred line that we may or may not know. You know, there's one of a former representative holding a videotape. I don't know if that would be a deepfake. I don't think it's real. I don't believe that is her body. I did ask for permission, but there is a picture of a current member of our chamber shredding material. Well, I don't think that's his body. I guess he could verify. I don't think that's his body. But is that a deep fake? Is this depicting speech or conduct that he didn't engage in? Well, I don't know. He's probably shredded some documents at some point. I mean, we all do. Not in a nefarious way, just in the fact that we all do. There's another one of a former member with his finger up to his mouth. I actually don't think that's his hand. I don't think that's his hand. But as I look at that, is that a deep fake? I don't know. There's another, I'm so glad that another image has just been passed around that is clearly within bounds, and I sure hope everyone enjoys that one. Fortunately, this one will remain in bounds with the new deepfake language. Thank you for that, Representative Stephenson. Yes, well, that's true. The lit piece is also accurate and true, so that makes it within bounds also. There's another image of a former member, which
Mr.
again,
Speaker.
I don't
Speaker.
think is accurate. I don't think.
Who's
it's
seeking
him.
recognition? Representative Scott, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, it's really loud in here. I can barely hear Representative New Brinley. Thank you.
Representative New Brinley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But there's the last one. Again, I don't think that this is our former member's body or headband, but I could be wrong. But does this depict any specific speech or conduct that he did not, in fact, engage in? Here's the thing. Like I said, I actually think this is a really good bill. I think it's a really important bill, and I think everyone in this chamber can foresee situations, frankly, in the very near future, where this law is going to become incredibly important to protect Minnesotans. And I support that 100%. I just think that there's some gray area here that causes problems that we should consider, which is why I have offered the amendment to this bill to just say that when it comes to print, we've got to look at this a little bit differently, and I would ask for support on the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion to the A6 amendment. I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Stephenson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm going to ask members to vote no on the amendment. I do think that Representative Brindley raises some important questions. I think that the bill, from my perspective, does have a clear standard because what it says is it has to appear to authentically depict someone engaging in speech or conduct that they did not, in fact, engage in. And I do think that that is a clear standard that can be referenced. My concern with adopting the amendment is I do think that still images, and perhaps not the ones that we've been seeing on the floor today. And yes, we did, I think that's some of the most interesting handouts we've had in some time, and it was important to me to send out the one to make clear that everyone understood that this one could still happen, that this one is, don't worry, we could still do that. But we have seen just in the last week an example of a still image deepfake that should give us pause, because images have been circulating this week of a former president of the United States being arrested. These have been on Twitter and other places, and that did not happen. Those images are not real, and some of those images could easily be construed by a voter to be authentic. And if you imagine those not being circulated on Twitter, 2 years before an election, but in a mailbox a week before an election, you can imagine the harm that that could do without any opportunity for redress. This technology is getting really good, and I think it's important to include still images. I think it's important for us to not be deceiving voters. So I appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate Representative Brindley raising this issue, and I'm happy to continue talking about the issues that Representative Brindley is raising, but I would ask today that members vote no.
Further discussion to the amendment. I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Stephenson, for this bill. I agree with Representative New Brindley that this is a really good bill, and I expressed this to you in Judiciary Committee. This is an important bill. It's almost there, but it's not quite there. And I do think that Representative New Brindley's amendment is an important step in the right direction towards dealing with really important core free speech issues that relate to the elections. Our rights as citizens to engage in core political speech right before an election is really, really important. And we as the state should never be trying to chill legitimate political speech, which sometimes can be catchy and provocative. And we as the state do not get to say what is and what is not legitimate. Free citizens, candidates, political parties need to be able to express themselves in connection with the elections. And I think it's really important that as we're thinking about this and dealing with legitimate problems, whether we're talking about this or whether we're talking about campaign financing or other places, we need to be really careful that we're creating bright lines instead of fuzzy lines. There are really two concerns that I think are really important and we need to take very seriously when we're talking about whether the lines we're drawing between speech that's prohibited or election-related activity that's prohibited and not. We need to draw very bright lines. First of all, because we need to create certainty for the people who are engaging in the speech. Sometimes those are just concerned people out, free citizens in our democracy that need to be free to speak, but also political campaigns and political parties. They need to have clarity, and they have the right to have clarity about what's legal and what's illegal without having to go consult a lawyer, without having to go dig through the statute books, or without having to just try it and then see what happens as a result. But the second thing we need to be really concerned about is the ability of either litigation or criminal prosecution to be used as an election tool. Having either a candidate or maybe a friendly county attorney or some other political actor intervene into an election at the end of it when we're talking about things that are in gray areas is not the way that our political system should work. It's not the way that our democracy should work. And so I do think it's really, really important that we think about drawing very, very clear and bright lines between what's legal and what's not and what's prohibited. And so I do think while this bill is good, Representative Stephenson, and I think it's a really, really important issue that we're trying to deal with, has a potential to really defraud and mislead voters. We also need to be very careful about drawing the line between legitimate speech and non-legitimate speech. And I think that using the clarification language that Representative New Brindley is doing here is a step in the right direction. So I would hope that members would vote in support of the New Brindley amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion to the A6 amendment. I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that there are enough problems with the underlying language that the amendment just makes sense to clarify, and I would ask for a yes vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A6 amendment. Forget that. All those in favor of the A6 amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 1370.
Third reading. Discussion to House File 1370. I recognize the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to a point of order.
Representative Torkelson, state your point of order.
Well, therein lies the problem, Mr. Speaker. I've been scouring the rules, trying to figure out if there's a rule against reading a chat GPT speech on the Minnesota floor. Perhaps you can help me, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Torkelson, I believe you're asking for a point of parliamentary inquiry.
Okay, that's fine.
No, there's not.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in spite of being able to find anything in the rules regarding this, I have to congratulate Representative Stephenson on his best speech of the year.
Further discussion to House File 1730. I recognize the member from Wright, Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, Representative Stephenson, for bringing this bill. It seems like every time I get up to address something you've said or done, I'm praising it. I hope to be able to continue that. But in this case, specifically what I want to point out is that this is an example of proactive legislation. And very often what we do, not just in this chamber, but in legislative chambers across the country, is react to problems. And we're at a point in our history where technological developments are increasing at an ever more rapid pace. And this is the type of thinking that we have to be able to do and willing to do, to ask questions about, well, where is this going? What kind of problems is it going to create? And how do we get out ahead of it? And that's what this bill does. And so that's why I rise in support of it. And, just to speak to the concerns that have been raised by my colleagues over on this side, I get it. Absolutely. We want to have bright lines, and it can be difficult when you're dealing with an emergent technology and having to discern where the intersections of different interests lie. But this is a step in the right direction, and maybe it'll get a little sloppy in its implementation. That's okay. We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll be coming back with other legislation to make those lines brighter at some point. But in the meantime, I would ask members to vote yes.
Any further discussion? I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Anoka, Representative Stephenson.
Well, thanks, Mr. Speaker, and members, and particularly Representative Torkelson, for your kind words. And thank you for the discussion, and I ask for a yes vote.
The clerk will take the roll on House File 1370. Would the clerk please call the name of the member who's voting remotely?
Richardson.
Richardson votes aye.
Richardson votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 127 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we will take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Torkelson moves that the rules of the House be so far suspended so that House File Number 733 be recalled from the Committee on Human Services Finance, be given its second and third readings, and be placed upon its final passage.
I recognize the maker of the motion, the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson, to explain your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rose a few moments ago to try and interject some humor into this body, but I rise now to bring up a very serious issue. We have a health care crisis in the state of Minnesota, and this crisis, this care crisis, is centered on our nursing homes. Many nursing homes in the state of Minnesota have already closed, denying care for some of our most precious citizens. More homes will close in the near future if they don't get increased funding. Funding, of course, is only one issue these nursing homes are facing. There are many others. But today, with a $19 billion surplus, there's really no excuse not to react and help these nursing homes with the fundings they need. Many beds in our nursing homes cannot be filled today, even though they are authorized, because our nursing homes cannot hire enough staff to man those beds, to take care of those patients. They are forced to pay such low wages by our system that they cannot hire the people they need so that these beds can be filled with our senior citizens that need 24-hour-a-day, 365-day-a-year care. Thousands, literally thousands of these people are being turned away from our nursing homes and forced to find alternatives that may not offer the kind of care they need. Hospital beds are filled with people that should be discharged to our nursing homes, and again, the nursing homes cannot take these patients and give them the care they need outside of a hospital environment. Hospitals and nursing homes are really the only ones that have 24-hour-a-day, 365-day-a-year care. You know, nursing homes are not just a business. In our small towns across Minnesota, these are centers of the community, where those seniors that lived and did business and thrived in these communities go to spend the last years of their lives, where they can be with their friends. It's not just the money. I ask for a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Torkelson requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Torkelson, anything further?
No, Mr. Speaker. This is truly a crisis. The bills that are before us, the governor's budget, the budget bills that have been introduced, do not adequately address this crisis. More nursing homes will close. More seniors will go without the care they need. I ask for a green vote.
I recognize the member from Isanti, Representative Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, members, Representative Torkelson, thank you for bringing this forward. This is an important issue, and it should be to each and every one of us. I'm in the position of having family members that we've been waiting 18 months to get a family member in a bed. And it's just getting worse. We need to bring this bill forward now, pass this off this floor, get it to the Senate, and put pressure on them to get this passed immediately. This has been an issue that's been getting worse and worse for the past few years, and now is the time to deal with it. Please suspend the rules, pass this bill, so we can get help to our family members that actually need it.
I recognize the member from Traverse, Representative Backer.
Yes, members. I just got word lately that in Wheaton, Minnesota, where I reside, again on that hump bump, tip elbow nose, they're seriously looking to close that nursing home. In my community, as you are aware of, I serve as an EMT, and I've been to the Browns Valley Health Care Center several times. This is so important, and this message goes out to all the businesses out there, because unfortunately, our current administration is not addressing this need. Starting on April 1st, this is no fooling, the Browns Valley Hardware Hank store in Tough Ag, every $100 that comes into the store, we're going to be giving our nursing home a $1 in-store credit for the whole month of April, because they are almost closing. I challenge the businesses across the state to do the same thing, give 1% to their local nursing home, because Representative Deb Keel 2 weeks ago learned that her nursing home in Crookston closed. These people, these are our parents. These are our grandparents. They deserve this. Governor Walz, we need to fully fund nursing homes at $1 billion. This is what we need to do. And businesses out there, small business owners, a lot of times we hear, we're the bad folks in Minnesota. We don't help people. This is why I am doing that. And our staff is donating 1% to our local nursing home. That's the Browns Valley Health Care Center. Because we cannot afford our seniors not to be taken care of. And today, members, vote for this motion. Stand up for your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors who have their parents and grandparents getting the care that they need in their local nursing home. Thank you, members.
Recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Today I rise with a heavy heart because I listened to the words, two words that are really should be very meaningful, one Minnesota. But what does that look like as a puzzle for the state of Minnesota? Does one Minnesota include the puzzle piece of nursing homes? Because nursing homes are not the same as assisted livings. We have 300 nursing homes in the state of Minnesota that are a step down from the hospitals and the only setting that offers 24-hour nurses. So if you're like me, I've talked to hospitals in all of your districts. I've talked to hospital ER doctors in my district, both of them. They support 100% that we fund nursing homes because they are bottlenecked right now and people are in hallways. So we have funding for ombudsmen to increase supports, and we're going to get more reports going to nursing homes telling them that people are waiting too long or people are waiting too long for care. And we know it. A report is not going to solve the problem. What's going to solve the problem is funding nursing homes. There is not a business in the state that can run waiting to have the cost charged 2 years after you incur them. They're carrying the bank. They have lines of credit. If you couldn't make your mortgage, you probably would lose your house. Nursing homes are going to be in the same boat. We give millions to nonprofits, millions to add bureaucracy in the government, and there is plenty of money in this biennium for that. But we don't have money to fund nursing homes, the people that built this state, the people that built this country. And they aren't the people that can be at home. They're not the people that can be in assisted living. How do I know that? I've been a nursing home administrator for 30 years, and I started 40 years ago as a CNA. I've worked every shift, and I've worked in rural Minnesota, and I've worked down here in St. Louis Park, in Cambridge, and I've worked in every sized bed setting. The reality is when you have a workforce shortage, which we have, you need economies of scale when you have large clinical need. If you're lucky to live to 95, you may not have the luxury to be in your house, to be in your apartment, or to be in an assisted living. You may need an RN. You may need an RN 24 hours a day. And you may need economies of scale because you may need 4 people to lift you. You may need a track ceiling to lift you. You may be sliding scale insulin dependent. You may have Alzheimer's and need special care that's not possible in assisted living or your home. So while I commend the items in the bills that have funded home care and PCAs and assisted livings, we are going to be in a world of hurt when we lose nursing homes in the state of Minnesota, and it's going to be transferred to hospital, the highest care level, the various high. If we think we're spending a lot of money now, we haven't seen anything yet, because 15% of the people that are 85 and older will need a nursing home. It's not what any of us are signing up for. You don't sign up for breast cancer, you don't sign up for Parkinson's, you don't sign up for congestive heart failure, and you surely don't sign up for Alzheimer's. But if that's the crystal ball you get, are all of you prepared to do 365-day care 24 hours a day? Because we're going back to the old days where you take care of your parents at home. And if you're ready for that, that's great, because that's the puzzle piece that's going to be missing for the state of Minnesota. This is a state of emergency, Minnesota, and urge the governor, and I urge this body to reconsider where they're putting the money. We have the money. We are letting Minnesota seniors know that if you're lucky enough to be 90, you're not going to get the care you may need. I urge you to realize the urgency for Minnesota, and remember, Minnesota seniors need to be that piece in the puzzle for nursing homes. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Clay, Representative Joy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Torkelson, thank you for this. We can agree, I think, across the aisle, across this whole room. We can't always agree on Social Security, we know that. We've had two tries to that, and we haven't got there. This is something we all have, people that have been touched with nursing homes, fathers, mothers, grandparents, everybody. This is something we need to support. I have 4 in my district, and I'm hearing one of them's going to close. I mean, what are we going to do with them? I mean, can you imagine living in those facilities and being told that we don't know how much longer we can go? When you have to carry a balance sheet of 24 months before you get your money, who runs a business that way? We can do this as a group. We can do this across the aisle together. This is something important for our districts. I don't care where you are. This is important, and we're hearing these calls. We're getting the emails. We're getting everything. Put everything aside. Let's get this done. This is something we can do. It's just, when you think of this and what we're going to do with people that are in these homes, they've worked their whole life, and they just want to continue to survive, and now we're going to move them out of there because we can't keep them open, and we're not showing that we want to get this done. We've done a lot of legislation this year. We've raised a lot of money that we're going to be in budgets. Let's get this done as a bipartisan thing and get moving. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm probably one of the very few people in this chamber that have actually spent 10 days in a nursing home as a client, patient, whatever. About 6 years ago, I had my knee replacement, and the time came to be discharged from the hospital to go home. at the same time that my wife had been called to St. Cloud to the hospital because her father was deathly ill. So the question became, where do I go and who's going to take care of me? And so they sent me from the hospital to a nursing home where I spent about 10 days. And I learned firsthand to appreciate the hard work and the essential care that is delivered. Not so much to me, but watching the work that they're doing with other people. Although when it came time to get rid of me, I don't know why they were cheering when I left, but this is a very important issue. We should support this urgency. We need to do more for these people. The budget targets don't recognize that this is the largest constituency group in Minnesota, our aging population. It's been mentioned One Minnesota, but One Minnesota doesn't appear to recognize our older adults. A failure to address the crisis in long-term care will mean more nursing homes will close, seniors will be denied the care they need, and caregivers will continue to leave. They need $1 billion over the next 4 years to get our caregivers to the starting wage of $22 an hour. Now, a lot of our fast food restaurants are approaching that mark. It doesn't seem to make sense that people serving us hamburgers and French fries are getting more money than those people who are trying to take care of the most vulnerable in our society. $1.3 billion for all of human services is not close enough to cover the serious needs of seniors, people with disabilities, and professional caregivers. And that's why I believe that we should vote yes on this very important motion to declare an urgency. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Douglas, Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, there was a time back in 2011 when I first got into office, and I remember meeting with the nursing homes during that campaign year, and the messages during that time reflect what we are hearing now. They came to the legislature and advocated for higher increase in wages because their employees were leaving to go find other work in places like Walmart or Target because they were being paid more in those fields, and the work was less demanding. And we listened to the nursing homes, and eventually we passed legislation to allow them to get reimbursed for the cost of care. Well, that cost of care is based on a delayed time of at least a 21-month delay in payment. Now, today at the press conference, I heard that some of them are still operating on 2020 rates. Okay, 2020 was a number of years ago. And think about your own budget. Would you be able to take care of the increases of today's government if you were still on the wages of 2020? Everything has gone up since 2020. We are facing unprecedented inflation in our lifetime. Nursing homes cannot keep up. There are mandates that need to be met and care that has got to be given. The workers themselves are burnt out, and yet they still go to work, and many of them putting in overtime to make sure that those that are in that home have the care needed. I received an email yesterday from an individual working at Canute Nelson, and in the email, it said that the budget that the House Democrats are proposing suggests it's okay with nursing homes closing. Why do I say that? Or why was that said? Because in the budget, where there is no money for nursing homes, there is money for nursing homes who are in those closing phases. So if there's a nursing home closing, there's grant money for you. But if you want to stay open and you want to meet payroll and you want to pay those employees a livable wage, it's not reflected. How many times in this body have we heard that a budget document is a moral document? There is no morality when you ignore our elderly and those who are at their end of life living in a nursing home. These individuals deserve dignity. And the budget that is being proposed says the opposite. Members, this is our time. This is our time to stand up and vote for a moral document. Vote for our seniors. Vote to fund our nursing homes. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Part of what I was going to start out with was kind of right where Representative Franson left off. We have been reminded when we have been in the majority time and time again by our friends from the other side of the aisle that your budget priorities are your moral values. And we've had a chance to see, if you will, a lot of moral values this year because we've got a surplus of $17.5 billion. And with the opportunity to expand and to take care of other folks, the nursing homes, and not only just the nursing homes, but those who work with those with special needs, have been forgotten on the curb once again. Not one of us in this chamber today knows whether or not we're going to be the next person as a family member or as the people sitting in these chairs needing the help and grace of the people who work at nursing homes in this state. I'm at that point in my life where I'm losing aunts and uncles, getting to see them at care facilities. And there are angels on this earth that are walking around, soon to be saints, for the pay that they work for is not at all commensurate with the compassion that they give to the people, our loved ones, our family. Representative Lizlikar, thank you. The work that you've done and the work that you do and the wisdom that you bring to this chamber from the work that you've done as a nursing home administrator is nothing short of laudable. I'm proud to have you in this chamber and the work that you're doing. There are 4 major nursing home facilities that are located in central Minnesota. 2 of them are located in my district. The Country Manor Nursing Home, the Good Shepherd Nursing Home. The other 2, one, Sterling, which is located in Representative Perryman's district, and the 4th, the St. Benedict Center, which is located in Representative Wolgamont's district. I fear that the business plan that these organizations have by providing assisted living, rehab care, and nursing home care, if you kick one of those legs out from underneath them, the whole program goes down. Now, earlier I said, not one of us knows if we're the next person who's going to need help from a nursing home or the care that those facilities provide. You probably got a better chance of having to go there for rehab right now, sitting in these chairs. As Representative Erdahl shared, he learned and lived that firsthand. Not if one of us knows if we're that next person that's going to need that care. And you know what? It's too late when you're in that nursing home and saying, I wish that there was someone who could come and help me quicker, faster, go to the restroom. I wish that there was someone who could come here quicker, faster, and help me with the needs that I have that I can't do for myself, or to have to be a family member to go look for someone to help. Folks, these are the realities of the things that we see. I challenge each and every one of you during the break that's coming up. Visit with your nursing homes. Visit with your administrators. And tell them that I did the right thing on Thursday afternoon by declaring an urgency and bringing money that is sorely needed to these folks. Mr. Speaker, I ask everyone in this chamber to pause and think, what is your moral values when it comes to supporting nursing homes? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of this urgency. I have spoken with the different nursing home directors in my district over the past several months, even before session restarted, and have heard many stories of the crises that our loved ones in our nursing homes are facing and the staffing shortages. I actually spoke yesterday, the nursing home director at the nursing home in Maple Plain wanted to come out, and they could not spare anyone to come here today to the Capitol to lobby and support. So they want you to know how important this is, but they are too busy caring for the loved ones in our communities to take time off to come to the Capitol and advocate for themselves. So we are advocating for them. And I'm also advocating for my godmother, who is a patient in a nursing home in the metro here. And I try to go visit her as often as I can. And it's a crisis, members. The people who work there are working flat out as hard as they can, but they do not have enough staff. And so she rings her call bell to get assistance going to the restroom or to get assistance with other things she needs. And she waits for more than an hour routinely to get help with basic functions. She does not get dressed every day because they just don't have people to help. And she doesn't have people who can help feed her anymore. And so she doesn't get the regular meals. She's been only getting sandwiches because she can kind of manage that. But she cannot have the regular meals anymore because they do not have the staff. This is a crisis, members, in our districts, in our backyards, for our family members. And $4 million, I mean, I can't imagine where that number came from in the budget, but that is an affront to our seniors, for the people who are providing the care. And there are many places in this budget that I have suggested, that other people have suggested, where we could find additional funds to help this. This is an urgency. This cannot wait until the end of session, horse trading in May, members. People are in crisis today in our districts, and we need to get this done. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Stearns, Representative Perryman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A couple of weeks ago, I stood up to talk about this group again, and that was to get rid of Social Security, suspend the rules, and bring up getting rid of Social Security, the tax on Social Security, getting rid of it. Now, 2 weeks later, I feel like I'm defending these vulnerable individuals again who can't stand up for themselves because they need help. And the people helping them are these nursing homes. And these nursing homes really, really need our help because they're vulnerable. And I had many, and I'm going to just put this, I'm not going to ask the question because it's a hypothetical question and I don't want to yield to anyone. But how many of you had people in your offices this week, last week, all session, coming about nursing homes? This is one area I get all the time. And this past week, I had it over again. I had a Zoom with one of my neighbors that were taking interest to getting her mother into a nursing home because she has to go to work. She can't take care of her mother anymore. If we lose these facilities, where will they go? We surely have funded homeless, and I'm very happy that we're doing that. But how many of these people will be homeless that they don't have children to take care of them or the money even to do things too? So one of the administrators that I did ask to come from the Sterling home called and said he could not make it. But he did say he saw in the bill, one bill, that the zoo's getting $28 million and the nursing home is getting $28 million and $4 million for the nursing homes. Is there an equity there? I don't know. But I'm just pleading with you today to please suspend the rules, because the caretakers that are taking care of the individuals today, I want to say we hear you and we see you, but we don't if we don't respond. And again, I'm going to ask you, how many times did you get an email or a text? And that can't just be over here. I'm not yielding any questions over there as much as think of how many did contact you over the past month even and asked for help. And I know a lot, because when they came to my office, sorry, Dan, I told them to go see Representative Wolgamott as well, because we needed your help to fix this issue. So please, 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 I ask to help this group. They run the people to help, but they need our help as legislators too, to find the money, find the funding that will keep these places open, and that we can take care of our senior citizens once again who need our help, who raised us, who have loved us, and now need our help to take care of us through funding of nursing homes. We can't lose anymore, guys. We just can't, because they have nowhere to go. So please suspend the rules. Do it now. There's nowhere to go tonight. We proved already that we can stay pretty late on these evenings. So please just suspend the rules on this one, and let's take care of this. Let's take care of it for our constituents and our Minnesotans who have hired us to come here to do a job for them, and this is one of our jobs. One of our jobs is to find money for our nursing homes, and that is now. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, I have to admit that this topic of nursing home fundings, I don't understand why it's come down to this, to be a sense of urgency, when I think we all across the aisle agree that it's a top priority, but we aren't showing that in our funding here at the state. You know, it's not a metro-rural divide like some things are. We all have elderly people in our districts, and we all want to take care of them to the best that we can. And I think we can all tell a story of a loved one being affected by the lack of funding. It was my mother-in-law, suffered a stroke. She was in Fargo and couldn't get back home again for days because there wasn't staffing available to open up a room for her to come back to her hometown and continue her recovery. You know, talking to the folks out in the lobby today, the people down here supporting nursing homes, I think there's a sense of deep concern and urgency in their voices as well, because they've been here before, and we never seem to act fully enough to give them the funding they need and deserve to take care of our elderly people. And now a lot of them are literally at the end of their ropes in terms of funding. Their reserves are gone. They're operating in the red and just can't continue to go on like that. And we're seeing daily or weekly homes that can't continue, and they fold and they can't go on. It shouldn't be happening here in our state. We're a state that cares about our people. We have the funding available. So let's fund our nursing homes and take care of this problem that we all really care about.
I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Hudella.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. So everybody so far has told you why. I want to try and help tell you how. So if we do the math on this, let's just say we took 20 of our committees, not even all of them, 20 committees, and those chairs agreed to shave $12.5 million off of their appropriations right now. It's going to put us at $250 million just for this next year. That is going to put a huge, huge dent in this $1 billion that we're looking for. So I'm trying to offer an easy solution. These committees I've been on, one, we've given away over $2 billion. The other committees, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. We're asking to solve this because it's a bipartisan problem. Both sides have folks that are having this issue within their district, and an easy solution of just, and I'm not going to go around and ask each chair to yield to the question if they would shave $12.5 million off of their budget this year. But if 20 of them did, we would create $250 million or $250 million this next year, the following year, and we can really address this crisis. So we're asking you to be bold. You've made a lot of bold decisions, in your opinion, on legislation this year. Our side doesn't agree with a lot of them. But this is another opportunity tonight to be bold, do something that's unscripted, do something to help Minnesotans across the state. And that $12.5 million from 20 of the committees is nothing, folks. So I, again, would ask to support this, and hopefully we'll get there tonight. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be brief. Members, I don't think we would be raising the roof like we are right now because we've seen the targets. The money is being spent like we've never seen before. We have so much money on the bottom line. What I'm urging today is for the leadership here to reconsider where those spending priorities are. We cannot leave this session with having $1.5 billion set aside for a payroll tax program, a paid family leave bill that will not work the way it is written. Plus, we're putting $600 million each year for the next couple of years to keep it going. That's a couple $2 billion, folks. And if we are going to leave this session with that kind of dollars sitting in a program that is yet to be stood up, and you think that's more important than taking care of the core businesses of what we have to do as a state to take care of the people that fought for our country, that raised us, that milked the cows, that did all the things that we grew up on, and we're gonna set $2 billion aside for a program like no other state. That would be a huge mistake, and you have the time right now to fix it. And the members that I have been visiting with on the other side of the aisle that are trying to figure out how to get the reimbursements to the nursing homes and to our healthcare workers, they understand that, and they're acknowledging the pain. But members, it's there. Go, and we got to figure this out. But right now, we're not seeing it in your targets. We're not seeing it in the planning of how we're going to fund our nursing homes. If we had seen it in our targets, we wouldn't be here because we'd see you have a plan. There is no plan. But you have $2 billion plus sitting there, set aside for a bill, House File 2, that will not work. We have to put the priorities there. Do not expand government until we take care of the core business of what we have to do. So members, I urge you to support the suspension. Let's do this before we leave for our Easter Passover break. Please, we've got to do it right. The priorities are mixed up. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a sad day. It is a sad day when we, the minority, are here on the House floor begging the majority to take care of our senior citizens. And not just any senior citizens. You know, I get that Chair Noor is talking about historic investments in senior citizens. It's not in our nursing homes. And our nursing homes is where our most vulnerable senior citizens are. Families do not make that choice for their loved ones if there is any other choice. We want to care for our loved ones. We choose to keep them home, but there comes a point when the care needed is more than what we're able to give. And those family members, those grandmas and grandpas, those moms and dads are in our nursing home facilities. And we've actually been, as a minority party this year, we've actually been really careful about this issue. We've worked really hard to not politicize this issue. We wanted to go through this process to allow time to make sure that the funding is there to take care of our senior citizens. And we didn't want to, frankly, screw that up along the way because of politics. So we've been really careful on this. However, last week in committee, we reviewed the governor's budget. And in his budget, he proposed $3.9 million. $3.9 million for our nursing homes. And not for all of our nursing homes, frankly, for a very limited number of critical access nursing homes. $3.9 million. We were also told in committee that that was the governor's recommendation because we have limited resources to work with. Limited resources. Folks, we have never in the history of the state of Minnesota had the resources we have now to devote to the most vulnerable Minnesotans. Never in state history. My goodness, if we don't have the resources now, we never will. Our nursing homes may as well close up shop and be done. Because if we can't take care of them right now, we clearly don't care about doing so. That is the statement we are making with the current budget proposals. That same $3.9 million that the governor proposed is what we will be passing today in an omnibus bill out of the Human Services Committee. Now, thank you to Chair Noor. I've sat down and I've talked to Chair Noor, and he knows very clearly how I feel about this. And I've also made it very clear to him that I understand that he had really tough decisions to make. Because out of an $18 billion budget surplus, the leaders of the House and Senate and the governor decided that 7% of that $18 billion was enough to care for the most vulnerable Minnesotans in this state. For our senior citizens, for our disabled community, that's it, 7%. And so I understand that Chair Noor had difficult decisions to make, but the leadership of this body has failed him, and the leadership of this body has failed the senior citizens of the state of Minnesota. The leadership of this body has failed our grandparents, our parents, our brothers and sisters, our aunts and uncles, who deserve our care, who deserve to be our priority. But instead, we have different priorities in this chamber. Well, we have $4 million, 3.9 actually, $3.9 million for our nursing home facilities. We have $28 million for the zoo. $28 million for the animals in the zoo, $3.9 million for our loved ones in nursing homes. Do you see a problem with this? Another priority, $194 million for a high-speed train to Duluth. I don't know, has anybody been to Duluth? I go there a lot. I don't know what the heck you're going to do in Duluth once you get there and you don't have a car. What nonsense. $194 million for a train to Duluth, $3.9 million for our senior citizens in nursing homes. $3.9 million for our nursing homes, $3.8 million for the Board of Cosmetology. Perhaps they should be disbanded. $3.9 million for our seniors in nursing homes. $2 million, you're going to love this, $2 million for poetry, art, and dance classes for felons. Poetry, art, and dance classes for felons are worth the same amount of money our nursing homes are getting for 1 year of the biennium. We've got $100 million going to grants to get more grants. But $4 million for our senior citizens in nursing homes. $3.9 million for our senior citizens in nursing homes. $4 million, we are putting more money into turning lawns into legumes than we are in taking care of our senior citizens in nursing homes. $4 million for lawns to legumes. 3.9 for our nursing homes. Hollywood film producers are getting 10 times as much money as our loved ones in nursing homes. $40 million in tax credits for Hollywood producers. 3.9 for our loved ones, the most vulnerable Minnesotans. Even more than that, 11 times as much money. You're going to love this. 11 times as much money, $44 million for an income tax credit for people who buy an electric vehicle. If you can afford to buy an electric vehicle, you don't need the tax credit. Give that money to our loved ones. Give that money to our nursing homes. $48 million for a solar tax credit. Again, if you can afford to put solar on your home, that's a lot of money. And if you can afford it, you can afford to do it without the tax credit. Give the money to our senior citizens. Give the money to our nursing homes. $17 million for 27 new employees at the Department of Human Rights. We're paying for 27 new employees at the Department of Human Rights. We are not paying for a single new employee at a nursing home. We're told that long-term care is getting historic investments. It's not our nursing homes. There's a difference. We're going to mince some words here. But there's kind of some obfuscating going on. Because guess what? There are lots of buckets here that are a little confusing, and I understand that if you're not in the human services world, you don't necessarily understand the difference between long-term care more broadly and elderly waiver and DWRS. I get it. We got a lot of things going on. But the bottom line is there is no money going to our nursing homes. And maybe this hasn't affected your district yet. And I say yet because it surely will. In the last year, we have already seen 5 nursing homes close their doors entirely. 5 nursing homes across the state of Minnesota have closed their doors. Just last week, a nursing home in Representative Keel's district closed. It was the only nursing home in the entire county. And now those residents are going to have to find homes elsewhere because that nursing home is gone. There's 3 more slated to be gone, and even more beds. We're losing beds all over the place. We talk about the nursing home closures. That's one issue, but we're losing beds all over the state. I guarantee if you take the time to talk to your nursing home administrators, they will tell you that they are no longer serving the same number of people they were before, and it's not because there are not people in need. There were 11,000 denials. 11,000. There were 11,000 people seeking care in a nursing home in 1 month who were denied. There is no room. And there's also no money in these budgets to make sure that we are taking care of these folks. Folks, priorities matter. We are told all the time that a budget is a moral document. If that is true, the morality of this budget that has been proposed is corrupt. This budget is immoral. When we can piddle away millions and millions of dollars on insignificance and leave our senior citizens to languish. We do not bring up this urgency today to play gotcha, to score political points. We bring up this urgency today because we have been told by the governor and we have been told by this body that we just can't find money for our nursing homes. There's nothing left. I implore you, think about your priorities. Think about the people that you have been charged to care for. By being given this mantle, this responsibility of being a legislator and representing the people of your district, I promise you that the people of my district want me to take care of their loved ones. I will be voting yes, and I encourage you all to do so.
I recognize the member from Stearns, the Minority Leader, Representative Dameth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I look around this chamber, there's a lot of empty seats. And I know when we do our work as legislators, there's a lot on our plates that we're shuffling back and forth with meetings with constituents and interest groups and other meetings when we're getting together. But I have to say that as we vote today to suspend the rules, to declare an urgency, and then to bring up House File 733, as we, with the roll call, push our button to suspend the rules, it's more than just, oh, the Republicans kind of had to drone on today about something. Let's just go ahead and push the button, get out of here, and move on with the day. There's a morality issue here when we vote on this next thing. I'm not going to repeat the details and the numbers that have already been raised by my colleagues in this chamber right now. You've heard those. I'm not going to repeat them, even though I would like to. But as we know that we would spend potentially more on the zoo than we would on our most vulnerable Minnesotans, that is a problem. And we cannot stop and just vote no and move on. Back in January, I, along with 3 of the other leaders, had an opportunity to meet and discuss just different issues, whatever was on the table with our governor. And I really valued that experience and the opportunity to have a conversation. We had already been aware of the issue of the nursing home funding, and we had already formed a working group within our caucus to identify some of those issues, led by Representative Keel. In effort to not politicize that, I raised that issue with the governor and the other leaders back in January and said, I don't want to politicize this. Could we potentially get funding and look at the issue before the end of session so we could address the actual crisis within nursing homes? We all seem to agree that potentially, yeah, we could have those conversations. Let's talk about that. Well, nothing went forward. And we waited, and so I asked for a meeting, potentially, with the governor again, and we had the opportunity to meet with the commissioner, Commissioner Harpstead, raising again this issue, hoping that it didn't have to be politicized, and it didn't have to wait until the end of session, but that we could address the crisis that it truly is as we continue to do our work. And you know we can do our work early in session if it is a true priority of the majority. But what we're faced with today is no desire to even bring it up, to bring up the bill to declare the urgency and take a vote on what would provide funding for our nursing homes. Now, I'm still hopeful, and I will always be optimistic that maybe we are going to be able to vote in favor of this with a majority in the chamber here and declare the urgency and bring up the bill. But I was asked by a member of my community, a constituent, not in a nursing home, but has a loved one in the nursing home. And they said, it's not that the majority wouldn't care about this, right? They would actually care. And I said, I hope that that is true. We will keep raising the issue until it is fixed for our most vulnerable. We do not want to be known in our state as those that would completely fail our most vulnerable. Members, I urge a green vote to suspend the rules, declare the urgency, and handle this issue now for Minnesota.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Long-term care facilities, including nursing homes, are set to receive historic investments. We share the concern about the staffing crisis that we've heard from our colleagues for our long-term care workforce. There are $853 million in value-based reimbursement rate increases in the next 4 years in the current budget proposal, and the estimated wage as forecast for 2025 for nursing facilities CNAs is $23, up from $19 today. There is a place to have this important debate. It's not press conferences during session. It's not motions to suspend the rules outside of the budget process. It is the budget markup that would be happening right now on the Human Services bill would we not be here on a motion to suspend the rules. So I urge members to vote no so that we can actually go into committee and debate the budget that will be coming back to this floor on these very matters. Thank you.
I recognize the maker of the motion, the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleagues for highlighting this very serious issue. Months ago, we formed a special working group called the Care Crisis Committee. It's been working on this issue behind the scenes for months, trying to avoid just this scene that we're having here today on the House floor. They were unsuccessful. I want to especially thank Representative Keel, who headed that group until she was unable to because she is off this floor for health reasons. She did a lot of work, and over those months of work, she kept reminding us how serious this is and kept telling us, you know, I've got a home in my district that might close. Well, the fact is that home has closed. Her warnings were real, and our warnings are real. You know, we often talk about the game of three-card Monte on this floor, and that's what's being played with these nursing home residents. For years, the Department of Human Services has used projections to pretend that there's enough money to take care of our nursing homes, and when it comes to the actual spending, the money's not there. I'm afraid we're seeing the same thing today with the proposals that are in the bills that are before this body or will be before this body that are in committee and the governor's proposal. The money is just not there. We're trying to declare an urgency today, but the truth is this urgency has already been declared by the people that run these nursing homes that came here today on very short notice to highlight this very critical issue. It's real, folks. Nursing homes are closing. The urgency is already with us. Please, vote green and let's do something positive.
The clerk will take the roll.
How many are gone now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Will the chief clerk please call the name of the member who is voting remotely?
Richardson.
Richardson votes no.
Richardson votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 58 ayes and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. Announcements. I recognize the member from Candy Ojai, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I wanted to share with you a little bit of an update with our train derailment that we had earlier today out in Candy Ojai County. I want to really just help paint the picture of how seriously this could have been. 1 o'clock in the morning, just west of Raymond, Minnesota, which is on the west side of my county, inside the county lines there. Little town of Raymond, 800 people, heavy traffic, usually goes by there, 30, 40 miles an hour typically, and we do a lot of rail traffic through Wilmer on the way to Sioux City. At 1 o'clock in the morning, 22 cars left the tracks carrying corn syrup and ethanol fuel. There was a fire, there was evacuations at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Folks were getting knocked on the door. I will tell you that I've never been more proud of our local folks to completely get unsettled from their deep sleep, of course. They ran to the rescue. Our county sheriff's department, Candy Ojai County Emergency Services, there were over 15 fire departments showed up to make sure that we are going to be safe for our communities. And imagine at 1 or 2 in the morning when you're going there, and the noise and the news that we've been hearing the last few days about traffic safety, train safety around the country, they're not knowing what they're walking into. Thank God it was not toxic fumes. Thank God it wasn't anything worse than it was. But I am just so grateful for those emergency responders. MnDOT was there. Our community of Raymond acted beautifully. They quickly followed in line, got out of town, went to the community of Princeburg, just down the road, where the mayor and those community members opened their arms. They went to the school. They got to sleep in the community Christian school that night, this morning, basically, to wake. They had to get out of the school because kids were coming, and so they had to get them over to the Unity Church, the Unity Christian Reformed Church in Princeburg across the street. And they were well fed, and they were lots of coffee, and that's where we all gathered this morning to share with the rest of Minnesota where things were at. I do want to thank the governor's office for reaching out right away. Senator Lang and I were on our way to kind of getting ready to get there, but I just want to make sure that Mayor Ardell Tenson from Raymond, Mayor Roger Ehrenholz, and those city council members, they welcomed each other and supported each other like I've never seen before. Everything is safe. The fire is still minimal, but people were able to return to their homes today. Again, I want to say that the state responded very well. The CEO and president of Burlington Northern Santa Fe was on the site. with their senior safety members. They don't know what happened, why it happened, but we will find out very, very quickly what will happen, and we'll know what to do in the future. But again, I just want to say that I'm grateful today I was able to listen to our discussion here. I want to thank the body for supporting Representative Pelowski's disaster relief fund today. These are the kind of things we need to be ready for, because you never know when it's going to hit you. I just, again, want to say thank you to the 800 people of Raymond for reacting so well, the wonderful citizens of Princeburg, Minnesota, to make me so proud to represent them. And again, we're grateful today, and I thank you all for so many of you that sent prayers and messages to us. We are hearing that loud and clear. We got by a tough day today, and again, our community is grateful for the response of the state of Minnesota. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that. Thank you.
Further announcements. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the Agriculture Committee will meet 15 minutes after adjournment in Capitol Room 120.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Labor Committee will be meeting in 15 minutes in our normal room, room 10.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Monday, April 3rd, 2023.
Representative Long moves when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Monday, April 3rd, 2023. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Any other members seeking to make an announcement?
Human Services will meet 30 minutes after session ends, so that will be 4:15.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Taxes will be meeting 15 minutes after session adjourns.
Are there any other chairs seeking to make announcements? Seeing none, I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Long moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails and the House stands adjourned until 3:30 p.m. Monday, April 3rd, 2023.